this piece had a headmaster, it probably would have been suspended long time for not towing the line, for breaking rules not so clearly defined. If this piece had a principal, it probably would have been sent home for reasons as simple as the author of this piece here don't
This piece had a headmaster, it probably would have been suspended.
This is a revolutionary piece in the spirit of Gil Scott Heron. But this time the revolution will be televised, just not commercialized, because it's not commercial. It is, however, controversial. So it will never become an advertising jingle nor a #1 Billboard hit single. It's all about bringing power to the people. And as the great poet Heru once said, we can no longer allow ourselves to be sheeple. Sheeple. So let this piece be shouted from way on top the steeple, on all radios, magazines, TVs, and from every mass media. If you are looking for this piece, you will find it in the encyclopedia, under Freedom Fighter, alongside names like Lumumba, Kenyatta, Asata, Ashantiwa, Busa, and Nat Turner. This piece is a mental and spiritual plantation burner. This piece is a church, and I am ringing the bell out. It will not conform, backslide, nor sell out. When temptation comes upon this piece, it will say, behind me, Satan, get the hell out. Many will want this piece to chill. And mellow. Because they misunderstand this piece. They fear it goes overboard and is exaggerated. They fear it will cause riots and social unrest to be instigated. They call this piece angry and frustrated. But this piece is not vexed. This piece is not naturally violent. But this piece can't stay silent. Can't afford to be passive. Not when the gap between what is and what should be is so massive. This piece has got to be aggressive. Aggressive in shaking awake the sleeping masses who have allowed themselves to be ridden like asses. This piece has got to be forceful. Forceful in forcing the full potential of its people to fulfillment. This piece is a filament, and it will not stop until it heats up and dormant spirits leap up, rising from the ashes, and the glass ceiling smashes. And yes, there are those who this piece causes to become uncomfortable. When they hear this piece, they get cross, angry, miserable. Their inflated egos are pierced and their guilty consciences lacerated when they see their victims liberated and their hidden crimes excavated. This piece is all about bringing comfort to the afflicted and affliction to the overcompensated and their gated community. Their gated communities can't keep out this peace. Not a guard nor watchman can stop it. Whether wall, hill, or high mountain, you name it, this piece can hop it. In fact, they should have called this piece Samson, cause they try to tie this piece down with all kinds of rope, and no matter what kind of rope they bring, this piece pop it. This is a piece that many of you will not accept. This is a piece that many of you will want to refuse, but no, you may not be excused. Don't care how you cuss, carry on and abuse. Well, all you want is a DJ flinging down hard tunes and hailing up crews. Well, all you want is a piece to make you hold your belly and laugh and keep you amused. Well, if that's what you want, if that's what you really want, take this. If this piece was to shoot you, what would it use? Wanna give up? A pistol. If this piece was to get sick and go to the doctor, what would it receive? Wanna give up? A prescription. All right. If this piece is not vexed, if this piece is not angry, what then is it? Wanna give up? Peace off, man. Wanna like that? Wanna like that, nah? But dying with this piece for this is a serious piece, serious as a judge. And when I try to push this piece, of course, it will not budge. It has got a job to do and it's determined to do it. Nobody can make it cease, stop, nor desist. Not even the police, cause this piece ain't no journalist. This piece was inspired by Muta Baruka to use my mouth as a bazooka to blast injustices and inconsistencies to pieces from all the cracks, corners, and crevices. This is a hard-working piece, 100% local labor. This piece ain't got no godfather and nobody never did this piece a favor. Yet there are some who would like to believe that this piece is second-rate and somehow lacking. Man, I feel if they had the way, they would import Chinese pieces and send this piece packing. But don't care how they come attacking this piece. This piece maintains its peace in the midst of chaos and confusion. So no politician can tie up this piece head, don't care when them call an election. This is a multi-purpose piece. It can be bombastic, comedic, and even romantic, yeah, even romantic. This piece has a heart, because when you meet this piece, your mind will not be able to delete this piece. It will be till death do you part. The listener is the bride, and this piece is the groom, and once they are unified in holy matrimony, consciousness starts to bloom. Releasing pieces of your ancestry still locked in slavery. Every suppressed memory is exposed. Your brain starts to go into hyper mode. You start to suffer sensory overload when you try to hold on to this piece, cause this piece moves at the speed of light and there is no end in sight. It cannot be created nor destroyed like energy, and it feeds upon the synergy between you and it, which is why you must never quit this piece. You are an integral part of the puzzle that fits this piece. Right smack dab in the middle of the road to your destiny sits this piece. That's why anybody who would like to try a hostile takeover or benevolent bio ain't want nothing with this piece. We put our blood, sweat, and tears in this piece. We lay down all of our fears in this piece. All of our cares are in this piece. So them can offer $5, $8, $10, or $20. We ain't selling no shares in this piece.
The illustrious Adrian Green, an African Renaissance brethren, with his roots, his navel string linked to Barbados, one of the world's most phenomenal, majestic African king father warriors, and a blessed poet and scholar and educator, amongst other things. We just want to put our hands up and give thanks and praise for him sharing this piece. And that is part of his collection of works that are on a CD entitled Hard Ears. We pull up those artists as we open up Building Legacy, this important framework that allows for us to talk about intergenerational linkages, connectivity to ancestral legacy, to contemporary affairs, how we're thriving beyond surviving in the midst of chaos, Isfet, and restoring the principles of Ma'at, truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, to the best of our ability. I'm always honored to be joined by the illustrious, majestic, most regal, Ma'atically balanced Queen Grandmother, African Queen Grandmother Warrior, the Honorable Sister Dr. SandRa Richards.
Thanks. give thanks. It's a blessing, an absolute blessing, and a privilege to once again be in service with you, my wonderful, 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 beloved, most reverend, powerful, bold, bodacious, esteemed High Priestess, African Queen Mother Warrior. Oh, African Queen Mother Warrior, Senate Dr. ChenziRa.
Who should be? Where is she there?
Right there.
Give thanks.
That is wonderful. And we greet each other in that way because we recognize each other's divinity and we make normal the practice of greeting each other as high, esteemed, revered, precious, divine ones in this earth plane. As you played the sound, word sound power of our beloved Father, Son, Brother, Spirit, spiritual portal, Professor Adrian Crane, I just thought to myself that we must, where we can, lift up our cultural warriors. We really have to lift them up because the amount of work, knowledge, energy that goes into those pieces, that is a form of communication, information, some degree of entertainment, elevation, articulation. I mean, there is just so much in his work. I am looking forward to when he joins us on this platform.
Agreed.
He is amazing. We have to wrap this thing up and get him here. You know, he allows us to share his work with his blessing, and so I'm always taken away to another place when I hear his word sounds.
I mean, he brings another layer of scholarship blended, woven into that educational street speaker space. So he has been able to integrate, like our legacy. He's a griot. He brings all of the historiography and the cultural heritage and intertwines that so proficiently. And he has a very commanding presence and voice. And it's, you know, for those of us that know him, he's very, very humble.
Oh, wow.
And you would, you know, he would just sit in the audience like, you know, like anyone, and then be very calm, you know, greet, showing utmost respect. I have to always say it's been with utmost respect how I see him engage, you know, with his queen, you know, with their children and with others, and is always prepared to do the serious work. And that's why we are speaking him up in this way.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm so excited that, you know, in his work, you know, on the graduate studies level, you know, completing MPhil, working on his doctoral studies at UWI, it's amazing to me, you know, I had the honor and privilege to just witness one of his presentations in preparation for completion and moving forward in his graduate research, and his connection of spoken word, the work of the cultural artist, the work of the cultural worker, and the responsibility, and then the challenge of making that bridge, not just the bridge, but breaking the barriers that tend to have certain limitations in the academy regarding literature, regarding history, regarding fine and performing arts, and what is the challenge between those different disciplines? How do we authentically make them interdisciplinary. And he did that. And I just was so, you know how you see a presentation, you're like, and then you have to like calm yourself because we're in the academy and we must be very comfortable.
And you know,
the analysis and observe and thank you.
Let me tell you.
I think I know I made sounds in their Zoom room. I did, you know, I'm not sure if it was like an undulating vibe or just how pleased I was and just kind of putting my commentary in the chat to, you know, really hold him up because he has created another layer of scholarship. You know, we speak of the doctoral level.
He is a thought leader.
There you go.
He is at the vanguard of so much. It comes through him so naturally. And as you say, in and among ones, he is so humble. He is so accessible. He is so open. He is so willing to support the birthing of creativity. He does so, and he's undiluted and unapologetic. And this is what we really need in these times. Earlier on, I was at the launch of the Center for Hybrid Studies. And the founder and visionary, Professor Dr. Derek Murray, and the chair, Carmelia, and so many other people were present, as was Professor Adrian Green. And you know, the gathering was so amazing because they are daring to do what you've just spoken about, which is to bring in all these different disciplines, bring them in. And I think you used the word blend, and blend them so that what we actually have going forward is a work, an integrity, education, research, performance, discovery of new knowledge, framed on African-centered, African heritage, Caribbean rooted and nuanced ways of being, not on a Eurocentric framework, but on our framework, so that we legitimize our sources of knowledge, we legitimize our ways of presenting and our ways of acknowledging. So if it is that we want to have utterances or what might be called outbursts because spirit comes through us and we just go, ah, then that's okay. It's not looked upon and frowned because it's not British or it's not European, because we're African heritage people with nuances that come out in this way. And so just like certain people's churches are kind of a bit staid and a bit, you know, a bit, I don't know what you use the word, it's a bit stiff. Just like when we do our celebrations, we bring the whole of ourselves. We should be bringing that into academia. We should be bringing it into philosophy. We should be bringing it into the arts. We should be bringing it into the ways of being and build legacy based on our legacy, not somebody else's. Let them come to us to find out what it is. But let us not frown on what it is that we have. And I don't know, I'm speaking it into being, Professor Adrian Green.
There you go.
Yui doesn't perhaps know exactly who is in their midst yet.
Yes. And what's powerful as we open up our building legacy, that's why we highlight artists, scholars, community activists, African King Father Warriors like Adrian Green, because he is able to give us that product that
Yeah.
propels some of these discourses, some of these conversations, uh, in terms of how we can move forward and how we can authentically build legacy. For some persons, it may be the production around the cultural and performing arts and how to make cultural creativity be authentic within our Caribbean experience and infuse the African, Eurasian, North American, South American, global experience, but through a thread that is authentically, naturally indigenous African. I'm going to say that again: authentically, naturally indigenous African, NIA, purposeful. And it allows for us to blend into several of the other conversations around what's going on in our world community and how we can build together. You know, we have sisters and brothers. You know, one of our goddaughters and powerful sister queens has been engaged in programs, you know, in Ghana, in places like Sierra Leone with Reverend Dr. Yvonne Washington Touré. I'll speak of her work with God's House International in Sierra Leone as we speak, you know, building clinics so that persons are able to have access to free and proficient healthcare services. I want to add that term, proficient, not just drug everybody to death and not just kill people to death. And it's really a testament, you know, within her ministry, you know, that's through that lens of Christianity. And that's the lens that is allowing for her to take the work to another layer,
Absolutely, absolutely.
you know, to help our,
Whatever the pathway.
whatever the
Whatever
path.
the pathway, yep.
Exactly. And she does it quite proficiently and is able to, you know, an effort that she's been involved in for more than 20 years. And it's been consistent. So there are places where we can go. When we go to places like Sierra Leone, you can navigate. What can you do and help to continue the building of legacy with God's House International? We have the Black Star efforts that are happening literally around the globe that are actually moving the Garvey consciousness into a not just a theory, but there are practically, you know, building institutions of higher education, building institutions of learning, building institutions for healthcare and wellness. And I put healthcare and wellness together because that's different than the public health that tends to devolve wellness in the wider community. We'll come back to that so I don't sound like I'm on a soapbox with the recent pandemic. We also have sisters and brothers that, you know, brother, we know him here as Big Stuff, you know, Ross Big Stuff, you know, along with his queen, sister queen, Adenike, and they have been able to traverse and do projects and programs that build legacy in Tanzania, in Gambia, and they are beginning to share techniques and strategies, methods that persons, you know, if you are an educator, how can you be part of this movement? If you are a craftsperson, you know, in the construction industry, how do you be contributory in these movements and programs? We also have brothers like the Honorable Dr. Haru Oforia Ta. And I always speak of him in this context because he's not a, he doesn't, even though he's a masterful spoken word artist, even though he is trained as a lawyer, his very powerful roots coming out of Ghana, traversing in different parts of Africa, studying in the US, living, giving his essence throughout the Caribbean and the world, has now expanded into herbal results. So when you hear their hashtag, we got action, not we gonna do,
Yeah.
we to da da da. It's
Alrighty.
we got action. So, you know, they're building homes, they're restoring that cistern, you know, the water reservoir sources for families so that people aren't begging for water. They're learning how to construct, you know, the cisterns that are customary in the Caribbean. In certain parts of Africa, as much as it rains, people don't have cisterns in many countries. So this is a new industry or I should say a returning industry, because we know that the roots are, of course, in our homelands. And it's just been a disconnection of using that old tradition of storing water in what we call cisterns, but in, so persons can, before they put up their foundation or even next to their foundation, they would actually have a water catchment system so that when they do have rain, they can store it, find natural ways to keep the water purified and clean for home use. And in some instances have filtration systems so they can even use that water for drinking, and for using in cooking, etc. So I'm just speaking of some because there's more that I have to reference. And as we move on in our discussion, Sister Queen Mother Nana Imakus with One Africa in Ghana. And because of the pandemic, at a time where she was traversing into Rwanda, she started to establish work, building community, engaging in education, museum opportunities, and helping brothers and sisters with repatriating. And for some, just knowing where to go and how to build legacy when they go to the continent. So you're not going as a tourist, because this is our ancestral homeland. So we're not to go as tourists. We are to go like the prodigal daughters and sons, go home. How about that? How about that? And be able to not only contribute, but also see the exchanges. We're not only a bank and coming from the West, and we're not only Western Union remittances when we come from the West. We are to be returning and re-establishing the legacy, traditions, etc., through rites and rituals and rites of passage, various ceremonial engagements, so that we restore. It's like we're reuniting with our great grandparents and
Absolutely.
their ascendants.
Absolutely.
When we think of building legacy, all of that is what
it's a whole gambit. We're not, that's right. It's not a kind of two-dimensional sustainability type building legacy thing. It's a, like you say, we're restoring, we're ensuring that there's cultural transference, that there's regard, that there's a revelation, there's reparation. We're doing this because ultimately we're the ones we're waiting for.
Yes, we are.
We're the ones we're waiting for, and many of us are doing the work. I'd like to take this moment actually just to acknowledge someone who has passed, made the transition recently, and he was about the work. He was about building legacy. This is Elder Menelik Shabazz, who has left behind a legacy that makes some of us not so unhappy about his transition. And I'm not saying that we're happy. I'm just saying we're not so unhappy, because whilst among us, he was on purpose. He was doing his work. He's a filmmaker. He's a writer. He's a producer. He's an activist. He transitioned just very recently, and it sent shockwaves through the community because he made the transition, but it also gave a degree of, acknowledgement that before he made the transition, he did the work. He was doing the work. And so as he has transcended to another realm and has become an ancestor, he has left for us a huge amount of work. Huge amount of work. He has touched so many people. The amount of people that have been sending messages and sharing images and speaking of how he touched them is quite phenomenal. And he also very recently moved back to the continent with his beloved Nefertiti. And I, on behalf of the we, want to just call his name. I want to call his name. Many of us need to document, and many of us are documenting, and he has left a legacy that is worth noting. We wish to send our condolences and prayers to the family, because they will be missing his physical presence, but hope that the outpouring of love and acknowledgement will comfort them at this time. Ashe. I am keen not to be sad. I am keen not to be sad, because in amongst the cycle of life is the occurrence of the transition. And we should really always be aware that at any given time, we will make the transition. Some of us think that we're here forever. We must always be aware that every time we see one another or speak to one another, it could be the last time that we see, touch, feel, speak to one another in this earthly mortal form. And there have been quite a few deaths recently. And I know we're going to speak about something that's happened in the region shortly, but I did want to take the moment to just honor our African heritage brother. He was born in Barbados, same place as Professor Adrian Green. That little rock brought forth some people, and I know that's your second home. So
remember, I have my honorary birth certificate.
Yes.
It was made official in Carafesta.
I know.
There you go.
Barbados is quite a phenomenal place, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yes. Well, we're grateful. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share the word sound power and the grace we were afforded to have Makeru, an ancestral triumphant one, like Menelik Shabazz. Even amongst us, there are so many stories that people shared. I was hoping to have more time to be at his feet, just because of the work that he has already left with us as a legacy. Again, building legacy, that was his work. You're absolutely correct, that was his work. And utilizing media to do so effectively, educationally, where it was culturally on point and historically accurate, doing the research. So his scholarship, his community engagement, his revolutionary fervor, and much more. And we definitely extend our words of praise, our words of strength and healing mercies to the family that are mourning his physical ascension. Now we really got to watch out what he's doing.
You know, that's the truth. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I really am. And I mean, I think differently. So people will be like, why is SisDr behaving like this? I am so excited. I'm so excited about what is going to come through as a result. You know, because when people make a transition, it sometimes triggers other people to realize time is short, or let me go back and see, or let me pay attention to what, and you know, it encourages and brings about a great change. One of the reasons why I'm excited is because as an African heritage woman, who is an African heritage woman, I came to activism in a certain kind of way. I learned about civil rights movement in the US, and then I discovered Professor Angela Davis, and you know, I saw her intelligence, her feistiness, her her courageousness, her sacrifice. I saw all of that. And I was a little girl in the UK. And I also became aware of things like the Cosby Show and other things like that. And I was an African heritage girl in the UK. So the stories that were coming and the lenses that I was being shown the world through were American nuanced lenses. And I was an African heritage girl in the UK. And I wanted to see myself reflected in all of this, because there is no separation, but there's also quite definite distinctions. And what Professor, the late, now an ancestor, Menelik Shabazz did was to insert me and mine into the corridors of history, our story.
Exactly.
So now we speak of ourselves as an African family globally. We're not just, in Michigan or in North Carolina or, in Yorkshire or, in Berlin. We are African family globally, so that when you touch one, you really touch all, because there's a lot of things that are very concrete and very similar. Living while Black is a thing, and the injustices have been documented. So I'm very excited about what's going to happen now. I am. Yes, I am.
Well, you need to be. There's so many different layers of what we are. As I'm listening to you, I'm looking at some of the chats that are popping up, because that's the thing about how we build legacy, because we've spread this in so many different spaces. So I'm like looking to see what's in Twitter, examining what's also happening in Facebook, making sure that I look at what's on YouTube, because most
you're socially savvy. I'm not there yet. You're socially savvy. I'm just like
conversing with you. You're there. You just choose to. That's how we should word it. You're kind enough to let others do some of it. How about that?
Oh, you're so generous. That's why I love you so much. That we are a reflection of each other makes me feel good. So I won't lie.
Because there's so much that we're all doing in general around technology and utilizing social media to get our messages across. Some of the messages that may have only stayed amongst one or two of us are now going amongst millions of persons, and because it's very interesting, when there's something negative, crisis oriented, it'll get 1 million hits. Maybe sometimes, and I really love that when I see certain videos that are uplifting and positive, they too may get, millions of hits. However, some persons overlook that these types of conversations, the reasonings around our great ancestral, ancient, African, Nubian, Kushite, Kemetu heritage legacy keepers, the conversations that we share about our revolutionary warriors, our cultural tradition bearers, our griot, and much more, our healers, our scientists. Many times it's like maybe it's it's kind of relegated to Black History Month in February in the West, October in the East. Occasionally it may be around Black August, and obviously the month of August, which kind of emanates around Los Angeles and has actually just moved into a whole global Pan-African space. It may be that we do it around African Liberation Day, and we still are dealing with challenges, because some people say African Liberation Day, other people say African Freedom Day, some people say Africa Day. It's the same May 25th, and it's an orientation. If we were completely liberated, then maybe we wouldn't have to celebrate and observe an African Liberation Day. Saying Africa Freedom Day is more figurative, because we see the conditions that African people around the globe have been subjected to, and in certain instances have allowed and have been sanitizing reality to where we don't engage collectively, cooperatively, collaboratively, spiritually, politically, socially, and otherwise together, right? So when you hear people say Pan-Africanism, that can mean a lot to people. So when we, for the purposes of at least how I have come to study and work and organize around Pan-Africanism, I am very comfortable with the total liberation and the unification of Africans within a very balanced, methodical form of social governance. For some people, it's going to be communism. Some people will say communalism. Some people will say some type of social capitalism. Some people will say socialism. And socialism, again, these are those terms that trigger where people, instead of us having conversations on how do you build legacy and have these conversations so that we can move forward? How do you do that? That's where we're coming from. And it makes me reflect on our illustrious, majestic brethren who joined us in previous Building Legacy episode, Dr. Toyin.
Hey.
So I have to call his name, and I say it with the utmost respect. I'm looking forward to meeting his queen as well as his family, because again, building legacy is around how we engage and show that respect and that reverence to the persons that we may deal with directly, and then of course, by extension, their family. That is the support system that lets them do this work. And that's what I was attempting to get to as we kept talking, as I listened to you, because you have always brought that reminder, the thoughtfulness that comes with this work, the critical thinking in action that is associated with this work when we're speaking of building legacy, so we can have that versation, that engagement that's respectful. And that's why, even today, several people have been offering to join us, engage with us, and so forth. Last week was an interesting, I'm giving thanks. We have Building Legacy on the 2nd and the 4th Saturdays of the month, because as much as we may be able to provide content every week, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. We're doing our best, because we're doing this, give a platform that is consistent of what is going on as well. There's so many things. I just go through like my calendar, and beyond my work responsibilities in my daytime activities, I'm looking at what's happening in the wider community here in the Virgin Islands, within the Virgin Islands Caribbean space, the wider Americas. And when we say Americas, I need to highlight from the North Pole to the South Pole. America is not limited to the 48 contiguous states of the United States.
I love that you keep saying that. And I think you should say it again, because those of us who perhaps were not schooled to know what it is that you're sharing need to hear it repeatedly, so it becomes the normal, it becomes the narrative, instead of what was given to us when we were children. We need to know what the real situation is. So please.
Of course, giving thanks for that reminder. Many times when we speak of America, people say America and automatically limit that to the 48 contiguous states that are actually what comprises the United States of America, inclusive of Alaska, which is quite northwest, and Hawaii, which are a collection of islands even further west in the Pacific Ocean. That also includes, with certain limitations and certain affairs that are still around the conversation of decolonization and self-determination, of the 5 territories that the United States of America has sovereign governance over, inclusive of spaces like the Virgin Islands of the US, Puerto Rico as a Commonwealth, Mariana Islands, American Samoa, and Guam. So when people say America, they need to remember that America is from the north, the Americas with an S, plural, is from the North Pole to the South Pole. That's why they call it North America, Central America, South America. And not to belittle anyone, but just because out of habit, when people say America, they tend to only think of the 48 contiguous. And they forget about the other properties that were purchased, some by force, mostly by force, and those that were taken by various terrorist acts of genocide.
Is it reasonable to say, therefore, the people are talking about America, they're talking about the mainland, what could be called the mainland, or we hear the mainland. Is that another kind of piece of confusion?
Of course, because when you say the mainland, you're giving more power to the geographical space than what it's actually worthy and deserving of. Because there's so many connotations to just saying the main, and again, we were all reared in that context, especially coming out of the Caribbean, that's what we would say. We would say the mainland, and people just automatically knew that you meant America, which automatically meant the 48 contiguous. And we were forgetting that, you know, Canada is like, right, so you've got some other spots, you know, throughout you. Central America they call it Central America. Granted, we name the respective countries that have sovereignty, and that's something to think about. However, the persons that make up this Caribbean space impact all of these Americas, all of them, from Canada all the way to Paraguay, are impacted by natural, indigenous, ancestral African people. Even when we say indigenous, that still comes into another layer of conversation that people get offended with, because when people think indigenous, they only think of Indians, quote unquote, you know, the two plaits of two braids and a feta. That's what kind of comes with that. And at best, maybe Mayans, Aztec, Incas, at best. And you know,
so-called mainstream media and propaganda has planted that in the minds of many people. So when you speak about, you know, the lands that were purchased, you know, that even that is a kind of like, so the lands that were purchased included the people on the lands. Is that what we're talking about? Like, so these so-called Americas see themselves as presiding over lands outside of the so-called mainland and the peoples of those lands. Is that right? Correct. But the peoples of those lands, do they have the same rights and freedoms and recognition as the peoples who are populating the mainland? I'm just the lessons I did at school didn't tell me about this degree of human violation or anything. So I'm just like, now we're building legacy and we really establishing the proper frame with everything in it. It's good for Africans across the water to talk to Africans across the water and find out what happened. So what happened to you? So what happened to you? Okay, same thing happened to us.
Exactly.
So the rights of peoples living in these spaces, sometimes spoken of as territories.
There you go.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Territories is a very nice term because they were purchased. You know, I can speak with clarity and firmness regarding the Virgin Islands of the United States. And what has been the shift, you know, for tourism purposes, it's like US VI. And that changes how you perceive and show respect or any type of reverence to the history, the culture and traditions of these spaces that, according to the treaties that still exist and hold authority and power for defining this space, it's the Virgin Islands of the United States, which is very different because there's a whole issue regarding how do you deal with these territorial parties? Are they citizens? Are they not? And certain persons can come from we're going to put it in quotation marks, the mainland, the 48 contiguous, and they feel, and they've been taught and they've been reared to believe that they have, according to the US Constitution, more authority and power because this is a territory. Let me be very specific. A non-incorporated, non-self-governing, this is by definition, territory of the United States of America. So you can say all of that, but those of us that have command of the English language know that that means it's a colony.
So non-governing means you don't have your own government. Is that what that means?
It means that you have a government that must acknowledge and accept sovereign authority and power by ruling by the United States. So we do have a governor. We do have legislators and senators that represent the interests of, we have a revised Organic Act that clearly was prepared by the US with some input from.
So they spread the power of the 48 whatever into these other spaces.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And persons question that. Some persons feel that, there's a certain degree of, it's not independence, because if that was the case, we would not be a non-incorporated and unincorporated non-self-governing territory of the US. And we would not have our Internal Revenue Board, Bureau, taking our taxation resources and, blending that with the Internal Revenue Service of the US. We would not have persons here that are serving in a military of the US. There isn't a Virgin Islands military. People are through the selective process. They can, some people don't like that word draft, but you are required to, and we have enough persons that, especially with the options that are made available economically, we have many persons that join and have given their lives and life of service to the US military. So when you're defending the United States of America and its territories. And Puerto Rico, with a population of 3 million plus or minus, is a commonwealth. But at the end of the day, they are not independent. American Samoa, same way. Mariana Islands, same way. Guam, same thing. And what has been very recent are they're looking at these insular cases because, there's a whole Department of Interior that addresses these colonies, these territories, these commonwealths. And there's been a question regarding whether or not these insular cases, at the beginning of primarily, looking at things between the turn of from the 19th century coming into the 20th century, are they discriminatory? Are they racist? Are they legal? Should they still exist? Should these relationships? So that's been something that's been coming through within US congressional activities. We have a representative in US Congress that does not have a vote on the US congressional floor. And she's powerful and she's knowledgeable and she has brought these things to bear. And there's been an ongoing discourse on being able to have the congressional representative for the Virgin Islands to have a vote on the congressional floor, especially on issues that are pertinent to the Virgin Islands of the US. The same thing with the people of the Virgin Islands are impacted by the efforts, directives, policies, executive orders of the President of the United States. However, we are not permitted, I'm going to use that term delicately, to vote. We do not have the right to vote.
See, that's messing with my head.
Don't let it mess with you. Just understand, because I'm giving you the diplomatic version. So I'm going to share something that I think it's important that our viewers, our listeners are fully cognizant of, because sometimes when we say these things, persons take it as, we're just upset or angry. And
So
one
I have a, I have a, see, it is messing with my head, okay? I'm trying not to make it mess with my head, but it's messing with my head, because I have a question now. Because there's some folk are walking around thinking that they free.
Oh,
They figure they free, and that they have all power, same rights of access, and that justice will be applied equally, and that, you know, all of this stuff. And I have a question, because people think we're free, and I want to know, is we free?
I am laughing and I'm silent because I'm going to share my screen.
Okay,
And
I'm paying very close attention.
I think it's important that those that are viewing this particular site is a people's historical journey to self-determination and decolonization. The Islands, formerly known as the Danish West Indies, now known as the Virgin Islands of the United States. This is a really important site. I encourage persons to go to APHJ, the number 2, SD.com, so that you can see a host. You can find out, you can see they give you, letters to the Taino Arawaks, food for thought, treaties and resolutions, community conversations, status of decolonization, proposed constitutions for the Virgin Islands. I'm going to pause on that one. 5 times. Unsuccessful. There's a lot to that. Various articles and essays, the reparation talk.
This is at website URL APHJ2, that's the digit number 2, SD.com.
Yeah. And I wanted, because of what you said, I wanted to, and you can see, there's been things around Virgin Islands Freedom Week. That's June 26th to July 3rd, with July 3rd being a culmination on the actual anniversary of the emancipation of enslaved Africans in 1848. And unlike the Emancipation Proclamation in the US in 1863, in 1848, in the then Danish West Indies that became the Virgin Islands of the US, it was Africans that demanded and decreed their freedom. And they forced the hand of the Danish ruling class.
You mean they didn't? Those very nice people didn't just decide that they were not being very fair, and they just thought that the world should change? You mean that we had resistance movements and demanded? Is that what you're trying to say? Because that's not how it's taught in schools. It's not taught like that. It's taught that, these benevolent folk just thought that, enslaving people and committing crimes against humanity was okay. In fact, the language around it is quite polite.
And actually, like even earlier this year in March, around the time of the observance of Transfer Day being March 31st annually, in observance, I'd say that very carefully. For some people, it's a celebration, but we know it as an observance in a historical reality. In August 1916, the then Danish West Indies was purchased by the United States government for $25 million in gold. The actual exchange of flags, the changing of the guard, again, a military exercise that we need to highlight, was executed on March 31st, 1917. So in subsequent years, every March 31st is known as Virgin Islands Transfer Day. And again, the inhabitants, predominantly people of African ancestry, were not inclusive, did not gain anything around that $25 million in gold, were not provided with the opportunity. Do you desire to remain as a Danish subject? Do you actually desire to become an American citizen, because that was never intended. And so in March of this year, there was I love how the paper called it the dethroning, it's dethroned. The term that was used was it was decommissioned in terms of the documents with the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, because in the middle of our Emancipation Gardens in St. Thomas, for years, there was this bust of King Christian IX, who was one of the kings, obviously, that had governance over the former Danish West Indies. And this was still up until March 31st, 2021. It was still up. And with everything happening around in the globe, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, the consciousness raising around the world, you know, with removing, instead of just snatching it down, there was an actual process of decommissioning that particular bust, and it was removed with much joy to the wider community. And it was interesting that with this removal, there was actual legislation so that it would be replaced ultimately with a conch shell blower, which is our tradition in all of our various marker spaces, in the public spaces in BI, to have a conch shell blower. And I will share a picture of what it's intended to at least look like a little later. But I just want to highlight as I go through this, and they're welcome on A People's Historical Journey to Self-Determination's website. Virgin Islanders, a quiet and humble people, should not be allowed to rule themselves for 100 years, and when so, should be done under white rule, for there are militants among them.
What are you saying?
Naval Governor Sumner Eli Wetmore Cattell of the newly created Virgin Islands of the United States in 1922. So I want persons to understand that when they hear about any kind of, you know, uprising or any type of questionable social activism to some, that this is coming from a space of very powerful, very knowledgeable, very engaged, very responsible persons.
So let me just, because you see, now my eyes are watering, my head is spinning, and you know, there are folk who are walking around thinking that all is right with the world. So basically, because it takes me a minute, one naval governor, Sumner Eli Wetmore Kittle, in 1922 said, Virgin Islanders, a quiet and humble people, should not be allowed to rule themselves for 100 years, and when so, should be done under white rule, for there are militants among them.
That's why it's important to recognize that, see the face that you're making? These are the things that forcefully encourage many, maybe not the majority, and maybe not those that are always vocal, but Virgin Islanders come from a very strong history, cultural tradition of resistance to injustice. That's why I've wanted to make sure that persons understood when we say emancipation here, it's because you had men and women, you know, Moses Scott Lee, Admiral Martin King. You had some serious leaders that said, we're gonna burn all of it if we ain't free by tomorrow. And they gave them like deadlines. And they were kind enough when they said 12 o'clock noon, because people started to simmer and people started to burn things, and folks started, you know, Europeans had to start running to the port and to the, you know, the military forts on both ends, especially here in St. Croix, which is the largest of the three islands. St. Croix, 84 square miles, St. Thomas, 32 square miles, St. John, 20 square miles, right? And the different keys around. But people was vexed because the conditions were just horrific, and the various colonial laws were very inhumane. And so there were insurrections all the time. I mean, we speak of, you know, like what happened in 1759, because there was a lot of our people and Europeans, I need to highlight that, whose lives were lost. In even the earlier years, the Danish came into the enslavement colonial process later than their brethren and sistren of Portugal, Britain, Spain, France, etc. And they were very vicious. And what's interesting is if you look at the history, persons will speak of them as being a benevolent enslaver. And
what is that? It's an oxymoron. What is that? I don't understand.
Right.
So English isn't my first language. So what does that even mean?
And so there's been this kind of, well, to this day, I mean, I've listened to persons, you know, come from Denmark, and they were never taught this. Like they were not
enslaver.
It's no such thing, but it's a wonderful intellectual term to define.
Who's wonderful intellectual? This is, see, who appointed certain people as the ones who decide who is the decision maker and who defines the behaviors and the practices? Who is this, like a self-appointing process? Is it just like you just get up one day and say we're going to be in charge of everything, and you know, and then other people? I mean, there's violence. There has to be violence in there. There has to be trauma in there. There has to be violations and breaches in there. If you're doing something that's bad and you get up and write a law to say that it's not bad, is that what makes it good? Like, reading that which you just shared is such a revelation, because there is a disconnect in the human family in terms of the violations that have happened. And when you dare to want to govern yourself, you're penalized. And we have had recent developments in Haiti and other places, which it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about.
I am grateful. So you've given us an opportunity to segue into another layer of powerful conversations, of course, around what has happened. You know, Haiti being that space that decreed, fought for, and gained freedom at a time in the heights of the enslavement, colonial, transcontinental Maangamizi, not just Ma'aka, not a happenstance of enslavement, but the intentional, willful, genocidal terrorism against people of African ancestry, indigenous people of the planet. I want to highlight that. And for them to decree and demand their independence, their liberty. Again, most persons were thinking that the theory of democracy was going to be apparent. Because of that, they have been forced to pay reparatory funds to France and other governments up until from the early 1800s until 2015.
How do people even, how do you know, what goes on in the being of some kind of being that thinks that, you know, not only can you try and sanitize the horrors inflicted against people who did you nothing, but when the horror stops, you then penalize the people by having them pay for centuries and centuries for becoming free. I mean, that if I for a second make the crazy move of trying to inhabit the perspective of those people think that they are Almighty God.
Exactly.
Those people think that they are privileged even above the Most High Creator. Those people are delusional and dangerous because they're systematic in their infliction of horrors and violations against the people whilst they are smiling in your face. What a wickedness. It's a wickedness. I just want to say that, and I'm staying very centered and very calm and very grounded. People don't like it when I get animated around these things.
Well, I'm going to use that as an opportunity for us to share another selection by our illustrious scholar, spoken word artist.
Professor.
Professor!
Speak it into being.
Professor Adrian Green. And this particular one is called Enterslavement, and it will give some word sound power for what we're sharing. And just stay tuned.
I might tell you about things you don't really care about. I might talk about some things that you never yet hear about, but them kind of things I can't fret nor fear about. I got things that need to be said and get clear out. So if you touch us on our mind, then time to clear out. I about to tear out. So things that might make you pull your hair out. I don't care if I hear out my voice. Let the truth of my whispers rise above the noise and confusion from TVs and radio stations. Devices of brainwashing and mind manipulation, causing mutated manifestations of manipulation chakras, possessing the souls of black folk with the spirit of backwards. In these times, the crackers control the wit from control towers by remote through microchips slipped into your brains during hours of soaps and sitcoms. They tell you it means situation comedy, but really it means sit and comply completely with the mindset, attitudes, and values of the prevailing system. Electronic valium to quell the people's thirst for freedom. You see them, men who should be kings like Simba, fashioning themselves as clowns like Pumbaa. Men who should be warriors like Ganga, Zumba, and Zumbi, fashioning themselves as gangster zombies, cannibalizing the flesh of their own communities. Living dead, say they're red, blue, or red, but it's really white that rules their heads. Some even call themselves dreads and gangster ras. What the ras are hearing? What must happen to the flock when the shepherd is a leopard who refuses to change his spots? Who will do anything to keep his spot in the spotlight? Something is not right. Music is a sustainer of life, but how can we survive feeding on vibes which emphasize the taking of lives of others like us on the inside of hard times, and advertise on behalf of guys who never buy from us unless they buy us? Music is such a rush, but something got to be wrong when every love song is really an ode to lust. That why Viagra sell out for half of them pipes bust from the pressure. Music is supposed to be joy and pleasure, but it will bring doom when every tune is about jama waist walking. Got children partying in mental chains, so their feet are fast, but their minds are shuffling. Nothing will help you when the rhythms you dance to, the beats you go into trance to, fail to advance you in any way and romance you away from yourself. Your spirit wants to find heaven, but your brain is imprisoned behind 16 bars.
And that allows us to go into this next segment as we realize that there have been some communication interferences. However, we're going to share some of the reports. I did not desire to go into my journalism space because that forces me, and we're reporting from, and I would have preferred to have our beloved sister to join us. However, you have mentioned it and we have shared it in a form and in a way that we can begin to highlight some of the realities that have taken place, that have been impacting this region. We are definitely, most definitely, looking forward to being able to offer a couple of statements. What I will share that I can offer is a concise statement that came from the Caribbean Studies Association. The Caribbean Studies Association statement on Haiti. The CSA is shocked and deeply saddened by the horrific news of the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse and the attack on First Lady Martine Moïse
Mm.
of Haiti. Haitian citizens at home and in the diaspora have served the CSA in various capacities, inclusive of the Office of the Presidency. The CSA had the honor of hosting its annual conference in Port-au-Prince in 2016. As a consequence, the CSA stands in solidarity with all Haitian citizens, not only because of our cooperative intellectual pursuits, but importantly, in view of our common humanity and our connection in a geopolitical collective of small island developing states. We pray for the speedy and full recovery of First Lady Martine Moïse and hope for sustained peace for the country and a sense of security and well-being for its citizens. And I wish to add within that statement that there, again, there's so many other statements. CARICOM presented a very telling, a very powerful statement as well. It's important for our sisters and brothers that are aware to reflect on all of the others that are speaking truth to power around this particular issue. There were particular uh, statements on Haiti, just in showing solidarity. Uh, it's really, really important for persons to also know that within the CSA document, it was highlighted as follows. The CSA respects the positive actions and intentions of CARICOM in collaboration with other Caribbean and global organizations, prepared to support, quote, in facilitating a process of national dialogue and negotiation to help the Haitian people and their institutions to craft an indigenous solution to the crisis, unquote. And that's based on the CARICOM statement that has, been shared in various networks. I think it's really important that our sisters and brothers know that there has been this ongoing thrust to share information. There was a platform, forum rather, conducted by the Africans Rising organization and on Haiti, the continuing struggle for liberation. And I encourage persons, look at their Zoom piece. There was some very powerful commentary, very accurate reporting regarding, what's taking place in Haiti so that people would know. You know, a lot of persons just really don't know. A lot of persons just really, truly don't know what's going on. And anytime, you know, there's an assassination of any person of African ancestry in a leadership position, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, the fact that persons feel that they can do that with ease and
No consequence or little.
it brings a certain, you know, it's been very challenging to say the least. So our intentions today were to have Sister Queen Ezili Danto of the Free Haiti movement, amongst other, you know, the Ezili, you know, Foundation and more, to share with correct, you know, updated on the ground reporting regarding what has taken place. And obviously, there's been a something that is interfering with our ability to have her join us, and perhaps she will join us towards the end, and if not, we will look to invite her again, you know, another time in the future, because there's enough content, there's enough information that we have.
You know, I know you're a part of what you're doing is trying to establish a secure link, because sometimes the way technology works, it allows us to come in as I think we had in our last broadcast, we get the person in, but the communication is so intermittent that we can't have a comfortable, solid, coherent conversation.
Right.
But what I would want to say is that if something like that can happen in Haiti, it can happen in Jamaica, it can happen in Barbados, it can happen in, it's happened in other spaces, it's happened in Grenada, it can happen. And so some of us who are feeling like, well, that's Haiti, we don't have to worry. We do have to worry. Haiti has demonstrated a resistance, a fire, a refusal to just be dominated by systems and peoples who would want to enslave even our thoughts. And so we have much to thank Haiti for, and Haitians around the world, we should offer them our support. You don't have to be in Haiti to have felt the impact of this. So if there are people in your vicinity, neighborhood, geographical landmass, reach out to them. Reach out to them so they don't feel disconnected, because it can be so, you know, the trauma can be amplified by the fact that ones who look like you seem to be paying it no mind. You know, if Black Lives Matter, then what are we doing? Or does it only matter if it's a Black life that has been taken in the US or in Europe? When you touch one of us, you touch all of us. And the idea that it's nothing to do with us is very, very, very naive, very dangerous. I'm trying to hold down my utterances.
Well, you know, it's interesting because what I'm doing and what I will share is, it's very difficult in the world of journalism, which has been corrupted probably from inception. However, persons feel that, you know, objectivity is based on the mind of those in power. And what we attempt to do is to share multiple sides. And that has been very difficult, especially now that everyone has access to information. Everyone has access to social media networks. Persons that are not even trained in the field of communication, journalism of any sort, don't even write well in any language, they're virtually alingual, are able to come into these various spaces and report. And the challenge that we've had on getting information around the situation in Haiti is, 1 minute the focus was on the president being assassinated. The next minute it was the wife was assassinated too, and then people had to correct themselves because she was still alive, and there were reports, photographs, evidence that she was, medevaced, and to date she's still living, and she has lived to tell some interesting commentary. And there are a number of sisters and brothers that are fully aware that from the time of his installation, and I use that term carefully, not inauguration, but the time of his installation as the president of Haiti, that there were questions on the validity of his election. And hence the people of Haiti peacefully, I'm going to say it again, peacefully protested and used the different mechanisms in a democratic republic to have him step down, to have him removed. And this is over 2.5 years. And because of the players that are involved, powerful countries, the usual candidates, the US of A, France, Canada even had a role, Britain had a role, and other entities, Interpol, etc., Israel, entities, countries that have been able to enjoy the fruits of unjust enrichment from the resources that surround the waters and are inside of the soil, the earth of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And I want to highlight that. So while people are seeing this, quote, infighting between the French-speaking, Spanish-speaking unified island, and there are persons that have been making their protests of his leadership, and they were demanding him to step down up until the day he was assassinated. So of course people immediately wanted to make it appear like there were these gangs and entities that actually did this, and in fact it were mercenaries. And then it was a big hula. Oh well, it was Colombians, these were Spanish speaking. When you say Spanish speaking in Haiti, and the conflict between Haiti and the República Dominicana, the Dominican Republic, then of course it implies a whole lot of other conversation. And for those same countries that I mentioned, the US, Britain, France, etc., they've been navigating how to have the world turn such a negative eye on Colombia. And again, they have their issues, they're not perfect either, in terms of their engagement with people of African ancestry, which has been moving in a different direction quite recently. However, they immediately, started arresting Colombians and saying that they were the mercenaries. Now, in fact, we're seeing that there are conversations, and I'm pulling this from some of the reports, some of the commentaries that have been shared by our comrade, Sister Queen Ezili Danto, in terms of, and I quote from her site, and the head of the police in Colombia is refuting all the lies of the PNH regarding the participation of Colombia in the murder of Jovenel Moise. The murder was done by Haitian police chiefs and accomplices in the PNH. No one will swallow the lies of PHTK and the PNH. And again, they're speaking of the different entities, the different factions inside of Haiti that have worked with the different factions inside of the various military orders in Colombia that were responsible for this. So this was not like and again, in his home. And I needed persons to clearly understand this was not, it's going to take a while before the authentic truth comes forward, and she continues, Leon Charles, Dimitri Herard, and all their accomplices should be arrested and tried by a competent judge in Haiti. And we are asking also for the arrest of PHTK leaders and Michel Martelly. Helene Lalime should be declared persona non grata and shipped out of Haiti as soon as possible. And they're showing the reports that are coming from Colombia, from their, their police force. And I think it's important because people like to terrorize the innocent, and the real terrorists get to just walk away and kind of, acquiesce into invisibility. Um, so there's a lot, people are having a hard time getting to the facts, of what transpired. There is, there's been reports from um, Bernard Sansari, right? Real facts about the coup d'etat in Haiti by the high command of the PNH and members of PHTK. This is also directed to the government of Colombia, the American people, and all free people of the world. We will not swallow the lies of international press, including the BBC of London, the US medias, Miami Herald, the French press, etc. These are the facts that we know to be true. The assassination of President Jovenel Moïse is nothing else than an inside coup backed by the so-called international community and the core group in Haiti. No Colombians or foreigners were involved in the coup. Point number 2. The head of the PNH in Haiti, Leon Charles, is one of the criminals involved in the coup. The head of the Haitian Presidential Guard was also involved, Dimitri Herald. And the PNH is up to their neck in the spilling of the blood of de facto president. Notice they said de facto. All right, President Jovenel Moïse and his wife Martine Moïse. Drug addict and trafficker Michel Martelly is deeply involved, and several members of PHTK in this horrible crime. 3. Facts that the Colombians are innocents and were working for the PNH and the government. Some 3 weeks ago, a gang leader by the name of Timakak, an associate of powerful gang leaders in Iso, village de Dieu, took possession of a home in La Boule, 1213, belonging to the former First Lady, Elizabeth Breval. La Boule and Pétionville are exclusive areas of the well-to-do and rich people in Haiti. Some 50 gang members had moved into this exclusive community with Timakak. Unable to dislodge them, the PNH used the Colombians that were at their service to clean up the area. The so-called mercenaries attacked Timakak using military precision tactics. They attacked from the height of Kenskov and cut off their escape route through Pétionville. Timakak and his group were dislodged and peace returned to the area. After the slaughter earlier in the month in Village de Dieu by gang leaders Bissot, who decimated SWAT teams and killed several police officers, PNH was not ready to confront Timakak in La Boule 1213, and foreign elements hired by them did the job. Those guys lived and were provided homes in Haiti by the government. They were home and did not take part in any assassination plot to murder Jovenel Moïse. It was an inside job by people close to Jovenel affiliated to PHTK. The strange part is that the real murderers are free and still in control of Haiti. Claude Joseph, given as PM AI under Jovenel, is now in charge, according to Ms. Helene Lalime of OAS. Question marks. Remember that Claude Joseph resigned as prime minister a few hours before Jovenel was murdered. Question marks. Jovenel's trip to Turkey with former PM Laurent Lamotte may have sealed his fate with the international community. The Haitian Constitution of 1987 calls for a judge of the Supreme Court to replace the president in cases like these. In this case, Mrs. Wendell Koch should be the president of Haiti until elections are held. What rights does Ms. Helene Lalime of the OAS have to decide for the Haitian people who should be their provisional president of Haiti. She is an alleged GF and sweetheart of one of the richest men in Haiti for some time now, Sharif Abdallah. So here we are. The only victims in this case, again, will be the 12 million people of Haiti. Corruption will be worse. All this is part of the planned destruction of a small Caribbean country whose only sin was to defeat the mighty army of Napoleon Bonaparte in November 1803. And he closes with "In God we trust." And that's Bernard Sansahrik. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men and women do nothing. He used that quote from Edmund Burke. I thought it was important to read that in its entirety because persons are looking at this situation very, very peculiar, and people are forgetting, as our sister queen Ezili Danto has shared before, more than 18,000 innocent men, women, and children have been murdered in the last 2 months in Haiti under the guidance and direction of the now assassinated former president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise. And that in of itself, and there hasn't, I haven't seen that on CNN. All we're hearing is there's gangs and the people have unrest and there's going to be a civil war. We have sisters and brothers that have really shared a wide assortment of information. And that's why it was important to us to have our sister join us and to highlight, some of the updates in that regard. Even there's reports that are coming from in various media that the surviving first lady has made a statement, and she confirmed that the Colombians did not execute her husband, that they saved her life. I think that that's powerful, and people can read that any way they'd like. And I think that it's important that we be mindful of what's going to happen for, as was stated here, the 12 million people of Haiti that need to have our support, have our engagement, have our solidarity, and not just solidarity in words, but our camaraderie, our
Absolutely.
funding, our whatever resources we can provide, because they are the example throughout the Caribbean, throughout the Americas, of what happens when an African nation rises up, decrees their independence, and holds it. It's beyond an embargo. It's beyond, this is outright terrorism. And so, I'd love for you to share some of your reflections, and then I can share the statement from the heads of government of the Caribbean community on this assassination.
Give thanks for that very detailed sharing. I wouldn't want to add very much more to that other than to reiterate what it was I said before. The people of that land, some of them are on the land still, but some of them are in the diaspora. And they will be feeling the impact of the destabilizing, the unrest, the uncertainty, the imposed debt, and basically the marginalization and punishment of Haiti and Haitians. They will be feeling it, and I think it's important that we embrace, get close to, express compassion for those who are maybe concerned about those who are at home, because that's something I think that we often don't think of. If we're thinking about the humanity of ourselves, if we're reinstating personhood to a population of people in the world who have been dehumanized for all intents and purposes, then let us exercise some compassion. Even if we ask how people are and they say they're okay, just to show an awareness in the diaspora by those of us who can exercise compassion and empathy, it will go a long way. It really will go a long way to reducing the trauma, the feeling of isolation.
I had to take a minute because there's some things that I'm also encouraging persons to look at. Another broadcast with Sister Dr. Ma'at. There was an interview earlier this week with Ezili Danto, right around the time, speaking on what was the status at the time, the reports on the ground around the assassination of the president of Haiti. And as I expressed earlier, there were a number of different activities and programs, and a lot of persons are overlooking that all of the players that are connected to this. This is not new, in terms of the frequency of assassinations of our people. I think it's really important too that persons listen to that conversation. That was a discussion with Margaret Prescott of the Sojourner Truth radio show, of Pierre Labossiere of the Haiti Action Committee, and it was moderated by Professor Walter Turner, the College of Marin. And there were other persons that were connected, Sister Kaumba Ture, the coordinator of African Rising, just having this conversation on anti-colonialist movements, and specifically speaking about what was going on, is going on, continues to go on, in Haiti, and how we can move that to another layer of engagement. So, we're putting these different links so that persons can also see, the discussions that have been happening, from others that have more accurate information than just what we would tend to depend on from the quite subjective journalism that is prevalent, whether it's, MSNBC, CNN, BCC, BBC rather, etc. And I think it's important that we begin to look and search with the organizations, look at the Free Haiti movement, look at what is available, by comrade Sister Ezili Danto and others, so that when we're having these discussions, that they don't stay stuck in the horrific element. So now that this has happened, what are the next steps? I think this is a great time for forces around the globe to really pour in resources of support to the people of Haiti. This is a great time to make sure that they are shored up in terms of the powerful, positive elements that exist to restore order, the authenticity of liberty, and to provide the support for those brothers and sisters in Haiti. The part that really stuck for me is that there are indigenous solutions. It's not like the people of Haiti need everybody to come from outside. This is a common conversation. People think that outside is better than inside, and the grass is green over so, and the damn day over so know the solution for right here. And that's not true. And that's something that is embedded in this statement that I'm going to share, if I may, with the viewers.
That way of being in the world, where Eurocentric thought and Eurocentric approaches, and somebody from the outside knows better and will save us. It's a theme that runs through everywhere that these nations and peoples that want to oppress touch. Anywhere they go, they have this notion that with them there, everything will be all right. And actually say very little about the fact that they are the reason um, undercover reason why things are not okay.
Exactly. This particular statement is from the heads of government of the Caribbean community on the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. The heads of government of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, met in a special emergency session on Wednesday, 7th of July, in the wake of the assassination of the president of Haiti. The heads of government are shocked and saddened by the assassination of a member of the CARICOM family, His Excellency Jovenel Moïse, during the early hours of the 7th of July, 2021. They are concerned by the condition of his wife, the First Lady, Her Excellency Martine Moïse, who was gravely wounded in the attack, and wish her a full and speedy recovery. Heads of government strongly condemn this abhorrent and reprehensible act that comes at a time of deep turmoil and institutional weakness in the country. They called for the perpetrators to be apprehended and brought to justice, and for law and order to prevail. In accordance with its values as expressed in its Charter of Civil Society, the Caribbean community does not settle its differences by violence, which undermines democracy and the rule of law, but peacefully through dialogue and recourse to democratic institutions. In light of Haiti's membership of CARICOM and the family ties that bind the people of Haiti and CARICOM together, CARICOM expresses its willingness to play a lead role in facilitating a process of national dialogue and negotiation to help the Haitian people, to help the Haitian people and their institutions to craft an indigenous solution to the crisis. They call on the people of Haiti to remain calm and to overcome their differences and unite at this moment of national peril. Heads of government extend condolences to the family of President Moise and the government and people of Haiti. As a mark of respect, the member states of the community and the CARICOM Secretariat will fly their national flags and the CARICOM standard at half-mast for 3 days, beginning immediately, as well as on the day of the funeral. And that's the 7th of July, 2021, and that is the CARICOM statement on the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. And I think you and I both see it would be up to you if you choose for us to welcome our sister and prepare for another time, or if you felt that we should just do like a 15-minute intensive. How do you feel? Unmute, unmute, unmute.
I was just talking to myself. No, I don't know that there's a problem just saying that we will do it another time, but even if you want to just hear a word.
Okay, we can do that. And to our viewers and listeners, we really appreciate, as we were preparing to close, we were able to be joined by our invited guest, Sister Queen Comrade Ezili Danto. Are you able to hear us?
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Greetings, 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 Queen Comrade. No worries. Like this is what can happen, and it is fine. What we've already decided is that we're going to have you return, and we will navigate to have you return, because we know that there were a number. You have been very busy. We've just finished reading and introducing all of the different spaces and places where you've been speaking on this very recent issue and development in Haiti. So first and foremost, we welcome you, and we appreciate you even making some time. We would probably be able to, just in the interest of time, and because we both have, our illustrious sister is abroad, and we have to navigate and make sure that everybody's time frames are respected. We would love to just hear a succinct covering. And let me just give an update. We were sharing some of the new developments in regard to, first it was Haitians that did this, and then it was Colombians that did this, and then it, with the assassination. And now the actual pot is turning and revealing quite a bit of information. And so we pulled from some of your interviews, for example, the recent one you did with Dr. Ma'at, where you were giving very clear historiography of what has transpired in Haiti. And then we were getting ready to close out with, and she will return with us and share the report in the near future. So we would, open the floor for you to just share where things are, what people can do to at least, in a concise space, make sure that you provide us with information on the Free Haiti initiative and movements, so persons could know where do they really engage, who should they engage with, because there's a lot of charlatans that are in the midst, and we know there's a lot of misinformation. So we would love for you to just give that concise piece so persons at least can know. And welcome, illustrious Queen, Sister Comrade Ezili.
Tired, Queen. Maybe we can record this at some point and then you can have it to give to your audience at any point in time.
We're live, just so you remember. We are live right now, so let's know that that's how we roll. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And,
thank you. And I say hello to your guests. What's the name of your guest?
I am African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. SandRa. And it's good to see you. It's so good to see you.
And what part of the world are you in?
Well, I move between the Caribbean and the UK.
Okay.
That's
okay.
how I move. But one of the things I was saying is that Africans in the diaspora, we cannot be separated by our geographical location. We must recognize that what affects our family in Haiti affects all of us. And actually, those of us who are in different places and maybe not where you are in Haiti, I need to reach out to our family and just express our solidarity.
Well, that's a good place to just start very quickly and say that in the last 2 months, about 18,000 Haitians have been displaced, poor Haitians. We've had a very strong sister. Her name is Antoinette Duclair. She's a human rights activist, and she was in Haiti, and they killed her on June 29th, along with 15 other people. So for me, this idea that the killing of this man is that important when he's been part of massacres that the world hasn't cared about. CARICOM, UN, and the whole entire international community has been trying to force us to go to election with an unelected man who has been massacring us in droves. So now that his own party and his own people has killed him, everybody wants to talk to IHC. Well, I want to tell you that there are some very, very poor, unknown people that have been dying fighting this struggle, fighting this liberation struggle. Nobody has cared, especially not the United States, especially not the media. They hired gangs. He hired gangs, and he thought he was safe from his own oligarchy. So it's very difficult for us who have shouldered this burden of the constant death of our warriors to really care what the universe thinks right now. We certainly didn't do it. Haitian people have been peacefully saying that the United States of America hires criminals, and they have dossiers on those criminals. They make them president, they make them prime minister, they make them senators. And it is those people who, because they have DEA dossiers and because they have cases that the United States can pull and do whatever they want on, and they can sign in our name to take our lands, our resources, and then kill us when we protest and nobody cares. So today his own people killed him, right? So what I say is that, I mean, the struggle goes on. It's going on in the UK for Black people. It's going on in St. Martin, St. Kitts, everywhere. We have to tell our own stories. And so we're telling our stories. We've always been telling our stories. And Sister Cherenza is one of the people that constantly stays abreast of what's going on. And I want everybody to know that she has been a warrior for us forever, like forever. When people say things like, you know, the Free Haiti movement doesn't exist, she says it does. She's like, where is Ezili Danto? She is the first one to do that. My own people don't do that. So I would like to just take this opportunity and this time to thank her for her constant blessings, finding out if I'm alive, finding out how I'm doing. Because like I said, they kill us. And there's nobody there when they killed Antoinette Duclair. They shot her in the head on the 29th. And remember, she was helping those who were displaced by these gang members that have weapons that Haitians don't manufacture. So the United States is shocked right now. CARICOM is shocked right now. Really? What did the Haitians tell you? We told you all these people had DEA indictments. And what just happened? When these mercenaries came in, there were Haitian cards on the outside. And all they had to say is, this is the DEA. And they all know they have dossiers. So they dropped their guns. That wasn't the DEA. And they went in and killed the president. So it's all the international communities are accountable for this constant humiliation that we have to deal with. I don't really have much to say except to say that you can see Dr. Mahat's interview for those that are looking to find out what's going on. I know that Dr. ChenziRa just told you the real details. I trust her I mean, all of us can speak on behalf of Haiti, not just, Haitien. You are all descendants of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. It is because of us.
I was getting ready to play something, but I want you to finish that point. Please go ahead.
Okay. It is because of what Dessalines did that all of us have this modicum of freedom that we have in terms of no direct colonialism. It's neo-colonialism, right? But this is what the United States is so scared of. Haiti's the linchpin of the balance of power. I've been saying it all morning, all day. They will destroy and kill all of us because they know the domino effect that will happen when Haitians take control of their country. So they marginalize our hand because we're between, as everybody knows, Cuba's right there, Venezuela, and then we have all these resources. Even Russia doesn't want to help us, though they will help the mulattoes in Venezuela and Cuba. They're not going to help us. You know why? Because they know when Haiti's free, Africa's free. Africa's free, the world changes. So this is why we pay this price.
I think that was a very eloquent way to close out our Building Legacy broadcast. I don't even need to put the video up. I encourage, what we've been doing is putting the links to your interview with Dr. Mahat. We put that one up. We also placed the other interview that was shared, as I mentioned to you before, with Africans Rising, because there's a number of people that are speaking about these things. And we chose to find those interviews, and I'm sure that there's others that really support the authentic Free Haiti movement and support the authentic brothers and sisters, comrades, that not only are in solidarity and talking, but are authentically in camaraderie with the people of Haiti, because we need to be focusing on the 12 million people of Haiti.
Understand, people, August is coming. Wakaima is here. Danto is here. They can't do anything about nature. They cannot do anything about nature. And the ancestors have heard, and the vibrations are here. I promise you, summer of 2021 is going to be very hot.
Very hot. Yes,
This,
it's hot.
this-
It's getting hot
this is,
already.
this is the beginning. This
Yes.
killing, I mean, we don't have to do anything. Nature itself is doing it. Their own nature. They're killing each other. And then they brought COVID to kill themselves.
Mhm.
All we have to do is sit, call on the ancestors, play those drums,
Mhm.
and understand it has been done.
Mm.
Dua, giving thanks.
Yeah,
We're,
yeah,
we're
sure.
really looking forward to, there's so many things that are happening. Please provide,
I can say I did an interview this right before this one.
Okay.
When you first call me, it's an hour and it has most of everything. It was a radio interview. I'm gonna try to cut it so that my hour, I will put it out on my Free Haiti movement, my Ezili Danto Instagram page, and it will give you all the information that you might want to know. And so people, all Africans, I'm telling you that it has been done. Stand still in your own power. Let them kill themselves. Just stand still in your own power. Believe me, Antoinette Duclair, that who just died, when I heard this news, I was like, thank you very much. I know you're there because they killed so many Haitians in the last, let's say 2 years since July 18th. All we have to do is call on those people. A spirit that was killed unjustly doesn't just go away. That's just a white man's thing. And we say, and I want every Haitian to hear me, Saki Mouri d'am venger yo. All those have died, we will avenge them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Queen. We're very grateful.
So much.
And with that, I sense that we have come to our concluding moment of building legacy for this wonderful time and day of July 10th, 2021. We're very grateful for having our beloved, majestic, illustrious activist, Queen.
Old, tired.
No.
Okay.
No.
No,
Oh,
No.
All right.
We're sending
Women,
energy.
okay? That's what you got. All right. All right. I want to tell you, old and tired. That's okay. That's what it is.
Well,
Let's be clear, ladies.
Thank you so much, Sister Queen.
Thank you
so
very much. Thank you.
Looking forward to the next time. And definitely, you have been empowering others, and just know that that's where the call is coming. So we're extending our energy so that old is a useful term. I prefer vintage. Tired. Stop. That's the thing about English. It's got a bazillion, synonyms, antonyms, whatever. And tired, I feel you. However, you're taking it to another level, because just what you shared, that we will avenge all of our fallen ancestors.
All of them. I'm telling you, anyone in your life, all of it, because every day they're traumatizing us with this white terror. Every single day. And as the oldest people on this planet, I know for a fact the sun is acting up right now. I mean, just look around you. And we are the people of the sun.
I shall. Do I want to? So with that.
So don't be discouraged, folks. And I know this is a chaotic time. All I say to you, and I even say this to the white folks who are innocent, that are sitting in Haiti just doing work. They're just rounding them up for nothing, for no reason, to have a fall guy. But we know who did this. The people who are now saying they're prime minister, there's 3 of them. We Haitian people don't have money to hire mercenaries. So yeah, the ones who are now, because the United States is doing the same little chorus, and they're bringing in Haitian diaspora integrated Negroes to say we have to go to elections in the November for legislative elections, and then in December for that's all they care about. They need one Negro that they control, so that Negro can give them all the lands and all the resources. They get really antsy when they can't do that. We don't need any elections. Thank you very much. You can take your Negroes and go with them wherever you want to go. But right now, my message to Ellen Lalume, you have no say in who's the president of AT right now. None. So you need to take your whoring body and get out.
Woo!
How about that?
Integrated Negroes whoring. So
Hey, listen, okay, if y'all want political correctness, you got the wrong woman.
when
You're in the right place.
when you are in the presence of an African woman, you're gonna get what you're gonna get.
You
Right?
understand? These
And
two
when-
women have been
and when
doing
you-
so much dirt.
When you
All
trigger our spirit, you're gonna get the original.
All right,
authentic,
and listen, okay,
undiluted.
we know, everybody knows I don't turn the other cheek. I'm a voodooist. We don't turn the other cheek. And we're bringing our spirits. There's an army coming, just like Marcus Garvey said, in the whirlwind right now.
You know
And
something?
we curse your husbands, your children, everything, because our bodies, our souls matter.
Queen, what I would like to do at some point is have you come back and talk about that turn the other cheek. We can't do it today, but turn the other cheek. Because I have forever had a challenge with this idea of turning the other cheek. I'm not in that. I don't know what that is. You can't. You mean no?
I'm saying they didn't turn the other cheek when we won the war, 13-year war. They've been coming after us because we kicked their butts all over the Caribbean and beat 3 European powers, and they can't process it.
So,
but they want us to process all kinds of trauma. I don't process nothing, none of it. I give it right back to you. Whatever pain they just gave us right now, in addition to all the pain they're being giving it to us, we give it right back to you. Ellen Lalume, Michel Sisson, UN, OAS, CARICOM, all you integrated Negroes who and the Haitian diaspora that's running around talking about we need to go to elections so we can have stability. The stability you're talking about, 12,000 Haitians were just displaced from their own homes. And where were you? And it was this president that just got killed, de facto president, who became a dictator because he was ruling by decree. The United States didn't care he was ruling by decree. They didn't care that he was killing us. So now you want us to go to election with the people that actually killed him. Ooh. Hell to the no.
Boom. And on that note, all right, people, those of you who are watching,
I'm gonna go live to answer any questions since I'm already here. So those of you who are watching, stay tuned. I'll give you a link. Okay.
Okay. I am very grateful. I would like to ask Sister Dr. SandRa for your closing remarks in our extended broadcast today, please.
Give thanks. Today has been really quite a sobering broadcast, for we have acknowledged the power, might of a cultural warrior, Professor Adrian Green, and we have also recognized that those that transition, maybe we don't all lie down and grieve. We recognize that in the midst of life, there is the transition, the changing of energy. What our queen, Sister Ezili Danto says.
Saying that Ezili is good. All right.
Excuse me.
Ezili is good.
Excuse me. We will hold you in high esteem, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay. So as I was saying,
you don't know how. You don't know. Okay. I'm just
that's okay, Queen.
A peasant child.
That's okay. That's okay.
Barefoot too. Okay. You saw this, all right? Barefoot. Peasant child.
Queen.
All right.
Queens can be barefoot. Let us not send out any crazy illusions. So as I was saying,
it's just like I said, so many people are dying, like.
No, okay.
We need to do something.
My sister, that is one of the reasons why we hold each other in high esteem, because so many of us are dying, and so many of us are being traumatized, and so many of us are being disregarded. And so that's why we among ourselves lift each other up. That's what this is. So let us not get confused with a Eurocentric idea of it. This is what this is. Holding ourselves, high priestess, majestic ones, divine ones, in high regard. That's what this is. So it is not to diminish or disregard your comment. I hear it, but we must lift each other up and have that as the new normal and the model. What I wanted to say is, I'm sure we will get the link for the live broadcast, but you gave a very clear instruction, and you said we should be still.
Yes.
We should be still and allow the Most High and the spiritual warriors to come and do their work. We should be still. And so that would be my reflection, that those of us who want to be busy doing something and getting confused, to be still. And let that which has to happen, happen. Let us be informed by the spiritual guides, the Most High. The energy that needs to happen must be allowed to do its work. So we will be still. And for that reason, I give thanks. I give thanks for wise words and the opportunity to be in service with beautiful queens and co-host with my esteemed, majestic, powerful High Priestess, Senate, Dr. African Queen Mother Warrior, ChenziRa.
Well, I'm grateful because we were able to cover quite a collection of thought today. I'm very grateful that our sister queen comrade Ezili was able to join us and give that succinct fire that is essential for us to understand what's going on around us. That in of itself is rewarding and very, very grateful. We're going to encourage persons to navigate around the Free Hike Team movement, look at the Ezili Danto websites, look at the various spaces on Instagram, support the efforts in whatever way that you can, because sometimes we overlook what we're able to do by hiding behind the things that we should be doing. And it would be really to our advantage to not just be in, as I said earlier, verbal solidarity with our sisters and brothers in Haiti, but to be in camaraderie and navigate what are the organizations that you can contribute to, what can you donate to. And the donation can be service. The donation may be linkages and resources, and the donation can also be hard, regular cash dollars in the currency that you're able to exchange. It's really important that we do this. It's very, very critical with what is happening with our sistren and brethren. We are hearing of the deaths. We definitely want to hold Sister Queen Comrade Antoinette, her spirit, in high regard, and begin to call the names and call those names and ask in the ancestral legacy spaces for us to be lifted up and protected, those that still traverse on the earth. And I say that so that we can authentically, I'm going to say it again, most authentically begin to heal, because at the end of the day, that's the other part that's going on. We're not healed. We're not healed. And because we're not healed, there's a whole different layer of engagement affecting each and every one of us. And it's important that we know this and that we remember this and that we move through this. And that's what my closing, if you would like to call it that, commentary is, that we really begin to hold one another up and that we begin to support authentically beyond the thought, that we do things that allow for us to authentically support what's going on with our sisters and brethren within Haiti. I hope person heard Haiti being free supports all Africans in the planet being free. I hope that we heard that. That's a serious reminder. So even though earlier we've shared the commentaries, from the CSA, from even CARICOM, and their support and indigenous shifting and upliftment in Haiti, our beloved sister queen comrade Ezili gave us some very cogent, very direct commentary of the next course of action. And of course, what is it that we can actually do? Not what we're going to think about, not what we're going to pontificate on. I love that word sometimes, but what we're going to actually do. And for that, I'm very grateful. And for that, I will leave our section there. We will close out with another piece that is always shared, from a place of engagement and strength, from our illustrious artists that we keep featuring. It's powerful, so that we can speak of our ancestors.
This one is for my ancestors. I feel them on my shoulder. Begging me to drop bombs like boulders. As a cultural molder. They insist that I use my gifts as a lyricist to bear witness to the past, present, and future of African greatness, and always place emphasis on the beauty of blackness, and never digress into the common connotation of my color with slackness. Tell the people the truth, and petty myths like Loch Ness. Direct them to the proof of an African genesis, and be a portal through which they can access the inner emperor and the inner empress, because it's the duty of every man and every woman to manifest God in flesh. So we honor the body, the Ori, and the Ruach Kodesh. We say Hetep Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Jah bless cause this poem, and all the rest are for the ancestors. We stand upon their shoulders. So rise, you African sons and daughters. Let me bust the steel files and fold. You see the people dying, but you know not what they're dying for. You hear the children crying, but you know not what they're crying for. You tell me that you're trying, but you know not what you're trying for. How can we win the war if you know not what you're fighting for? You want to see more clearly, but your vision don't stretch very far. Get your head out of the clouds so you can see beyond the stars. Embrace Venus and plant your feet on Mars. Your mind should span galaxies, but you keep it locked behind bars. It's time to get grounded in the tradition which our ancestors founded. Every time we left it out, we tend to get pounded. By European ideology, we are confounded. But hearken your ear so you can hear when the echo bell has sounded. And have no fear, cause we are always surrounded by the ancestors. They're wrapped around my shoulders. And even when times get bad and cold, them's the times we get bad and bold. The spirit world is accessible, it's permeable and it's porous. The ancestors sit behind the veil patiently waiting for us. They implore us to join them in chorus, to fight against those who would detest and detour us. But some careless Ethiopians think that somehow the plantation owners now adore us. And if we stick our heads in the sands, our enemies will ignore us. But if that's what we think, then we're on the brink of extinction like Tyrannosaurus. No time to blink, time to link with that and those which came before us. Like the Sphinx, which is really Horem, Heket, and Heru, who is higher than Horus. None but ourselves can free our minds, and none but ourselves can ensure that we are victorious. In a world of criminals, the righteous man and woman is notorious. But have no fear, stand firm by your God and also by your glorious ancestor. Our shoulders are their shoulders. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, what a beauty it is to behold that which is They insist that I use my gifts as a lyricist to bear witness to the past, present, and future of African greatness, and always place emphasis on the beauty of blackness and never the garrison to the common connotations of my colored slackness. Tell the people the truth, not petty myths like Loch Ness. Direct them to the proof of an African genesis and be a portal to which they can access the inner emperor and the inner empress, because it's the duty of every man and every woman to manifest God in flesh. So we honor the Baraka, the Ori, and the Ruach Kodesh. We say Hetem Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Jah bless cause. This poem and all the rest are for the ancestors.
I want to thank everybody for just being a part of the journey and give thanks to my beloved sister queens for just sharing this time. Looking forward to the next opportunity to share sacred space with each of you as we continue to build legacy. Give thanks.
Peace and blessings.
Give thanks.
Honor and respect.